Hello, Otome lovers, and welcome to the Otome.com podcast, your ultimate source for all things romance, mystery, and storytelling in visual novels. I'm Sweet Pixel.
And I'm Lover's Lance, and today we're going to explore the twisted world of Save the Villainess. With us are Tanya and Emily, the brilliant minds behind this mesmerizing game. Tanya and Emily, thank you for joining us. Could you start by introducing yourself and telling us a bit about what you do?
Hi, everyone. Thanks to Lover's Lens, Sweet Pixel, and Otome.com for hosting this podcast. I'm Tanya, one of the developers of Save the Villainess, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm a neurodivergent, Desi American writer, editor, and researcher who lives in the northeastern United States. I'm a long term fan of Otome games, murder mysteries, and evil women that everyone wants to destroy. So, after I met my amazing friend Emily, we decided to combine all of these passions and create a black comedy Otome murder mystery game featuring a villainous woman that everyone wants to destroy. So, I'm excited to share more about this game, Save the Villainess, with you all today.
Hello, and thank you to Lover's Lens and Sweet Pixel for having us here today. I'm Emily, and I'm the co-developer of Save the Villainous. I'm a neurodivergent writer, programmer, graphic designer, and general jack of all trades who has been amazed by how many of my skills and interests I've been able to share when making Save the Villainous. It had never occurred to me that I would be able to translate my skills as a competent swine judge into a video game, and yet, here we are. On a more serious note, one of the best experiences of my life has been getting to work with my amazing friend Tanya on a game that allows us to pursue our love of history, mystery, and trying to survive in a world that is trying to destroy you. I'm excited to get to talk more about our game and help you decide whether or not you want to save the villainess yourself.
I think it's a very amazing thing that both of you are friends and you got to work on this project together. There's definitely a sort of comfort and openness that you can share. It's just not the same when you're not close and you can share thoughts and discuss things, openly. So I think it's a great thing that friends have gotten together to work on a project.
I completely agree, and working with Emily has been one of the best experiences I've ever had on any kind of project because I consider Emily my best friend, and she is such a wonderful, hardworking, creative, brilliant person. And it's such a privilege to work with someone who, has the same vision as you, who wants to create a visual novel that sort of pushes the you know, pushes the art form in I hope what is fun, exciting ways in weird territories that we're just so excited to explore further. So this game has like every other big project has had its challenges, but it's just been exhilarating and wonderful working through these challenges with someone who is as amazing as my friend Emily.
I think that's special.
Oh, and I don't want to keep it too much longer, but Tanya is absolutely incredible, and I do want to give her the credit that this project would not have happened if she had not convinced me that we had a story that we absolutely had to tell as a video game. And she's just an amazing writer, editor, and general creative genius that working together has been just one of the best experiences of anything I've done in my professional or private projects.
I love that. I love that. Genuinely. I think that's very sweet. And it makes me happy to hear. I think it should be something that's more common nowadays, two friends getting together. I just love that. Now I wanted to share that I have actually one of the genres that I like reading in manhwa or webtoons or manga is actually villainous stories. And, well, at least the ones that I have read are usually start in the same way. The villainess is lying in her bed and she wakes up and the servant comes in and then she realizes that she's in this new world and she doesn't know who she is anymore. But in this story, I feel like it's a bit more special. For those who might not know, could you summarize what the game is about?
Oh, yes. And I love your summary of the typical villainous origin story where you just wake up and you're like, what is this? Why am I filled with luxury? I'm staring at myself in the mirror. Oh my god, I've transmigrated. That is like the classic villainous plot, right? So, and as you can see, Save the Villainess is a story that kind of takes that plot and is all about giving it a twist, an unexpected, sometimes horrific and sometimes hilarious twist. Because ultimately, Save the Villainess is a story that tries to answer one specific question. It challenges you to say, what would you do if you lost your memory and became a villainess in a romance novel you cannot remember, where one of your love interests wants to kill you? So it is a story that basically takes the biggest advantage people usually have when they, transmigrate into a romance novel, that their advantage of knowing what's going on, knowing who the players are, knowing what their role of the story is, and it totally strips it away from the player. Because we dump you in the story with the villainess, Jane, and neither of you have any idea what is really going on. When you wake up in that carriage with Jane at the beginning of Save the Villainess, you don't know what's happening, neither does she, and you will either have to figure it out with her or you will watch her die. And so Save the Villainess is a story about survival, and it's a story that covers many other themes. Primarily, it's a story about what does it take to survive a life where anyone, even the people who seem to love you, might destroy you. But it's also a story about uncovering past trauma and finding the strength to heal despite having been hurt before. And finally, it's a story about what it takes to find love and hope in a world where you are the villainess that other people hate for reasons beyond your control. And of course, besides these darker, more mature themes, we have a lot of lighthearted antics, because our story is also a dark comedy murder mystery that challenges you to fight both enemies and furniture inside of this supernatural sentient manor that will murder you if you're not clever enough to solve its mysteries. So our game is purposely a huge mix of genres that come together in a way that we hope will satisfy and surprise our players if they're looking for something out of the ordinary, if they're looking for something they haven't seen before in either the Otome genre or the Otome Isekai genre. And, if this summary intrigues people, they can always check out our free 3-hour demo on both Steam and Itch, because we basically showcase a lot of the horror, the humor, and the romance, and some of the surprises in our game, with a lot more to come beyond the demo.
You have to be honest with me. You mentioned fighting furniture. Now, is there a way for me to defeat those cushions in the carriage or not? Because I tried for the life of me. And then the game said, "Oh, look at you. You're kind of stupid trying to defeat the cushions. There's no way you can do that. Please tell me there's a way for me to defeat them."
Okay. All right. So this is a little bit of a hint. Maybe not right now, but we do promise you that everything you do with the cushions in the carriage, and this actually will come up later, will be remembered later in the game and will help you. So anything you learned in your defeat by ominous cushions is going to be useful to you later.
All right. I have a personal vendetta with those particular cushions. I will have my revenge when the full game comes out, for sure. And I really laughed when the game told me, oh, look at you fighting those cushions. Oh, I was like, oh, you caught me. Well, I wasn't expecting that one. So yeah.
Yeah, it was funny. It was funny.
I laughed for sure.
So you kind of answered my next question. We know that villainous redemption stories are quite popular lately, and we know that Save the Villainess stands out because it's quite different than everything else we have. How did you manage to create such a unique spin on this? How did the idea for this game came?
I'm thrilled to answer it because we always love to talk about our inspirations. So, as you've already said, our game is very heavily based on the villainous isekai, also known as the Otome isekai genre of stories that became popular over the last few years. So just in case our players, our listeners need to know more about this. In the villainous isekai genre, the idea is that an ordinary person from modern day society reincarnates into the hated villainous female character of a romance story, which can actually be an Otome game. So, as a villainess, she is supposed to be the contrast to the lovable heroine. So, where the heroine is kind and virtuous and gentle, the villainess is, evil and selfish and spiteful, and she wants the heroine's man for herself. And the idea is that the villainess is slated to be destroyed, but when you or the female lead becomes the villainess, you have to struggle to survive a world that is trying to eliminate you. So when Emily and I thought of Save the Villainess, we were just inspired by all these really darkly hilarious villainous isekai series that we loved. We were especially thinking of like My Next Life as a Villainess, Beware the Villainess, Tear Moon Empire, these amazing stories that just marry dark comedy to legitimate mysteries and surprises and dangers faced by the villainess. And, what we also loved is that these brilliant stories had these hilarious, quirky, maybe possibly neurodivergent, and very proactive villainesses, which inspired Jane, who's our own quirky, neurodivergent, and proactive villainous lead. But what we wanted to do is that instead of having a story that basically follows a set path, we wanted to make our villainous story into an interactive game, and this will allow players to finally control what the villainess does, who the villainess loves, and what fate the villainess meets. So we wanted to make Save the Villainess a game so that players could finally get a lot of choices in determining how the villainess' story unfolds, both in terms of her survival strategies and in terms of her love life. So if you've ever gotten tired of the villainess ending up with the crown prince or the Duke of the North, and you're like, no, this time she's going to get with a childhood friend. He's no longer going to be just the second runner-up or the third runner-up even, or no, this time she's going to finally get with the female lead character. You can finally fulfill those ambitions for yourself.
I personally liked that. I like that. I think I needed to see something different. It was getting very repetitive, honestly. I mean, every time I was going into one of these villainous stories, I was just like, oh, okay, here we go again. I know what's going to happen next. And this put a very nice twist to it. I mean, I was surprised in a nice way. So I really liked it.
I absolutely love that you were surprised by the twist that we put in villainous stories, and there will be so many more twists to come, including twists that are related to a lot of the Easter eggs that we put into the story so far, such as the tarot theme that we've embodied and that Emily can talk more about.
I just want to note, I'm so excited that I get a chance to talk about the tarot theme a little bit here with this. I'm not sure that everybody who played the demo noticed it, but it actually is a really important thematic thread in the game. So for context, for anybody who wants to try the demo, each chapter is named after a major tarot arcana and also opens and closes with a specific animated tarot reference to that same arcana. For those of you who have even more tarot knowledge, see if you can determine if the animations for the opening and closing are referring to the upright or reversed form of the arcana. That matters. And if you look at the chapter system on the main menu, you can actually see arcana from future chapters and potentially spoil some of the themes those chapters will be covering in the game. So the reason the tarot theme is an important part of Save the Villainess is because it's part of one of our larger references to the occult and mystical practices of the late Victorian and early Edwardian period. We will talk probably more about this later, but the historical context of Save the Villainess is actually really important to the storytelling that we're doing. And the sections of the games are actually each divided into 3-card tarot spreads that are deeply tied into the larger stories and themes of the game, with one very important exception. It was very important to us that Save the Villainess pull from the cultural, social, and political influences of our chosen time period. And the tarot themes are an important part of setting that particular stage. We actually have other card references in the larger game that pull from writers such as Lewis Carroll and Oscar Wilde, because chance and fate are major themes within our larger story. Tarot allows us to see whether or not destiny can be rewritten, or if you are going to be held fast by the cards in your hand.
It's such a nice touch. I loved it. I absolutely love the tarot theme. And one of the things that I noticed when I started playing the demo was the animations in the beginnings of the chapters. I was like, this is the Hermit. Come on. This lantern, it's the Hermit. And it felt so good to me. I loved it. Definitely. So thank you for adding that.
I'm so glad. And again, I hope people who are interested in tarot, you'll be able to pick up a bunch of stuff about the story going through. We did spend a fair bit of effort in trying to make sure that worked out.
I can't wait to see the full game and how this evolves in there. And it's time to talk a little bit about the gameplay. So in Save the Villainess, players have to guide Lady Jane through investigations, deductions, and even boss battles, as we mentioned. What was the process like for blending story-driven gameplay with these interactive elements?
We're so excited to get to talk more about this, because when we were designing Save the Villainess, we wanted our gameplay to be part of the story we were telling. Specifically, we wanted to tell a story that could only be told as a game, because part of the story that we want to tell includes the interactive elements that a game allows us to provide the player. Everything that you do in Save the Villainess is part of the larger story you are telling, and the game is going to remember most of it. For people who've played the demo, you might even notice that the game is commenting on some of the things that you have chosen to do within it. Thanks to the amazing artists we collaborated with on our sprites and backgrounds, what you see visually is what is actually happening in the game. This means that in a point-and-click investigation, what you see in the scene is what Jane is going to have available to investigate. Furthermore, your choice of what matters and what doesn't will have consequences for her and for you. Similarly, the deductions that you're making in the game are based on what information you have gathered both visually and from the story. What people say and do matters, both for survival and for determining the story that you as the player want to write. Even in boss battles, the game will remember what you have done, and it will come back to play a role in the story when you least expect it. So I wasn't joking about those cushions. Whatever you chose and did in there, that comes back. Ultimately, everything in Save the Villainess is about creating a story through your actions and deductions, and we hope that people will enjoy the path to finding out the truth of the mystery.
That's so nice. It reminds me a little bit of, I don't know if you have played Stanley's Parable, where the game actually talks to you and makes comments just the same way. And even the interactive episode of Bandersnatch, I think it was called, of Black Mirror and Netflix, it just freaks me out so much. So good. So immersive.
Oh, absolutely. And just as a note, we love Stanley Parables, and I should probably not say too much more than that. But yeah, Stanley Parable is a very good call.
Yeah, I noticed that there's some inspiration.
Now, I wanted to ask something about the day, the night, and the time in between day and night. And you can answer this only if it's okay. I don't want to spoil anything too much. I was very curious what this time is actually. I am kind of wondering if it's something like a parallel universe of where Jane is right now. Kind of like, this is on one side, this is the normal world, and then when it's the time in between day and night, it feels like a totally different world where Jane is transported, we are transported. Are my assumptions correct on this, or not really?
I just want to say you are very clever, and we can't say too much. We do promise this will become more obvious as the game goes on, but love getting clever thoughts around stuff like that. And that, yes, observing that strange time does seem to be different from the normal world is a really good catch and will be very helpful later in the game.
I'm really glad to hear that. The game now, I am going to move forward with talking about the characters. And the game features 4 potential love interests, each of which is suspiciously gorgeous and possibly dangerous. So, how did you approach designing these characters that are so hot as they're potentially untrustworthy?
That is such a fun question, and I, I am thrilled to talk about it because we tried to have a wide range of love interests. We tried, and all of them have wildly different personalities. They have different methods of achieving their goals, and they have very different relationships with Jane, our villainous main character. And I think what is very fun is that you are dropped into the story along with Jane, and you have no idea what these pre-existing relationships are. So they know you don't know them, and you have to survive that lack of knowledge without letting them know that you don't know what they know. So bit of we hope that's a bit of a fun twist there. So when we created Save the Villainess, as we said before, we were inspired by these fantastic villainous isekai stories like My Next Villainess and Beware the Villainess. So if you've read these stories, you know that all of them play with several romantic archetypes that often show up in historical romance novels. So there's the prince, the duke, the childhood friend, the servant, and rarest of all, the female love interest. So when we created Save the Villainess, we wanted to represent these 5 different romantic archetypes in our game, and we wanted to, give players a chance to get a happy ending with each of these archetypes if the players could make sure they don't murder her first. So, and we also wanted to make sure we're not just writing the normal versions of these archetypes. Each of our love interests is a deliberate subversion and deconstruction of the archetypes they represent. Ultimately, we want to take everything you expect out of any of these characters, whether it's the prince, the duke, the childhood friend, whatever, and we want to just twist it. So we hope to send our players on a journey with these characters that they have never gone on before, and to hopefully change the way they look at these archetypes for a long time to come.
I am suspecting that the house is a character of its own, really, because that's the feeling that I got once I entered it, and everything the servant shared with me. It feels like it's a character of its own, and I really liked it. Is it okay for you to share something more about the house, and if it really is its own character, or maybe the characters that live there make it feel more alive, and that's why I'm getting that impression.
Do you want to take this one, Tanya, or shall I?
You are absolutely the architect of house, Emily. We all know this. We all know Murder House. Murder House comes from is your brainchild. Only you can answer this one.
Well, with that rousing endorsement, yes, and I think it is fair to say that the house is. I don't think this is huge spoilers for people playing the demo. The house is obviously acting in a sentient way. The house definitely has things that it is doing and it is choosing to do. And one of the things that I think was really interesting about designing this and about thinking about having house, as you say, as a character of its own, is that means that it does have rules. It does have ways it behaves. It does have ways it acts. You can influence it. And if you pay attention to what's going along, this can help you in certain parts of the stories. In one of the routes in particular, understanding house will probably save your life. And we do have a surprising number of people who want to romance house. We are
no way.
We are we're thrilled and delighted by their interest, and we are going to try to find some kind of Easter egg to reward them for their interest in our sentient murder house.
Now, Save the Villainess has a very playful vibe at times, and it feels like the game isn't afraid to break the fourth wall. Can you share how this approach influences the storytelling and what kind of reactions you're hoping to get from players?
We're so excited to talk about our sort of attempts at deconstruction and having that meta element here, because before Tanya and I ever decided to create Save the Villainess, we had written close to 1 million words together on villainous stories alone. We're currently actually finishing up an original villainous-themed prequel novel to Save the Villainess on Archive of Our Own and Royal Roads that is called The Villainess Wants Her Prince to Live. So we love our villainous stories, and we wanted to create one in the form of a game as well. However, for us, making a villainous-themed game was less about making a game and more about telling a story that could only be told as a game. We wanted to really dive into what it means to be a villainess and what our choices as players of Otome games mean in a larger context. The meta aspects of the game are part of the larger plot, but they are also a way for us to play with how we tell those kinds of stories and affectionately look at our expectations for both how Otome games and Otome Isekai stories normally work. As you mentioned earlier, these stories can often start to feel very much the same. So one of the things that really mattered to us was, well, what happened if we injected a little bit of reality into this? And how would this actually play out in history? How would these things happen? We really want players to think about things they might take for granted, such as tutorials, or the idea that a narrator is going to tell you what to think of a character or event. In Save the Villainess, the story is told entirely through dialogue, with at least a few characters who seem aware of how these stories are supposed to go, and that this story is not going to follow that normal pathway. We really hope that players are going to enjoy some of the more tongue-in-cheek humor in the game, but we also hope that the game makes them think about how who tells the story shapes who we believe and who we make our villains.
I definitely suspect that Axolotl, he looks very suspicious with his suit and him just walking very slowly across the screen.
Yeah.
Suspect number 1 in my book.
The axolotl,
one.
spoiler, the axolotl is the fiance all along.
I just knew it, you know. It was just right in front of me. That I knew it. I really like that guy passing through. It was I was surprised. I was not expecting that, honestly.
Surprisingly plot relevant. Incredibly plot relevant. So keep an eye on that fiance scuttling by with his 8 feet.
Now, another character that I am very curious about is Edmund, the Crown Prince, and suspect number 1. What makes him such an intriguing and complicated figure in the story?
Oh, I'm so excited to answer this question because Edmund is my favorite love interest in this story. So he's the Crown Prince character, the man who is supposed to become the future king of the fictional kingdom that the story takes place in. And let's be honest, every story that has royals and nobles in it needs a Crown Prince in the cast somewhere, right? However, he's also one of my favorite subversions of his archetype. So when you think about crown princes in any kind of story, whether it's a romantic story or a more action-oriented story or a historical thriller, they tend to come in 2 different flavors. So one flavor is like the perfect destined prince. He's the one who is destined to be a good king if he can overcome the trials in his path. Think Dimitri from Fire Emblem. Dimitri has many, many, many issues, but if you go down the Blue Lion's path and you keep him alive and you finish the route, he will become a savior king despite all of his issues after overcoming all his difficulties. So, and of course, in a romance story, the perfect crown prince is the man who's usually going to end up with the female lead once they overcome all the obstacles to their love. So, for instance, you can look at every single Prince Charming that shows up in a fairy tale. Whether it's, Cinderella or Snow White, all the princesses will end up with him. On the other hand, you have sort of like the evil crown prince, right? Or the awful crown prince who doesn't deserve to be a future king. Maybe it's because he's irresponsible or stupid, or maybe he's even a sociopath. Like, think of Joffrey from Game of Thrones. But in any case, the story has to get rid of him and put someone better in his place. So in a villainous story, this guy is usually the, cruel, selfish fiance that the villainess has to get rid of before he destroys her. But Edmund is a crown prince who deliberately doesn't fit into either of these categories. He's not perfect, but he's not awful either. In fact, he's just sort of this adorable, easily flustered dork who thinks that puns are the best way to make people laugh, which is accurate, and he blushes every time Jane teases him. And we wanted Edmund to deliberately be a very different kind of prince character, and you will absolutely see how we subvert the archetype as you go through his story and you see him grow and you see the ultimate endings that he reaches, whether or not you choose to have Jane romance him. So what you see of Edmund is just the surface of his character, and there's so much more going beneath that surface. And we're going to steer his story to a place we have never seen a prince character go in a romance, and we can't wait to see players react to his growth and his happy ending with Jane, because I can promise you it is nothing we've ever seen in a romance story before.
Sounds exciting. Can't wait to see the full game. But we need to talk about Eisel a little bit now. He's the eccentric Duke of the North. What can you tell us about his relationship with Jane and how his quirks play into the narrative?
So, Duke Eisel Kuze is one of the most interesting characters in Save the Villainess, with one of the more interesting relationships with poor Jane. He and Jane together are kind of twins of chaos, and a strong focus on survival and understanding one another's subtle moods and thoughts. Eisel is someone who thinks very differently from other people, but Jane and he share a lot in common in terms of their sort of what we call right angle understanding of the world. This actually isn't an accident, since both of these characters pull from very different aspects of my own and Tanya's neurodivergence. One of the things that has made me very humble and grateful when releasing the demo is how many other neurodivergent people have mentioned that Eisel's way of thinking resonates for them. So, because he's got these unique thoughts, his unique mind often makes him the funniest love interest in Save the Villainess, which is kind of a sharp contrast to the normal stoic, cold Duke of the North archetype. He has an almost Terry Pratchett-esque feel when talking about the North and his experiences in life. For everyone else, it's the black comedy of uncles being eaten by feet fish for their snazzy hats. For Eisel, it's Tuesday. One little spoiler that I can hint at here is that what seems ridiculous might have a much more sensible and horrifying explanation than it initially seems. Eisel's mind has allowed him to survive situations that are terrifying and tragic, which is hinted at in the demo. If you enjoy his different angle on the world and people, there's something very interesting to discover in his relationship with Jane, and the larger mystery as well.
Now, I was excited for us to get to Ben, so I'm sorry. I really like the childhood friend character. I am a sucker for them, unfortunately, so that's why Ben is my favorite. And he's the loyal childhood friend. It's a classic trope. But there's clearly more to him. How does his dynamic with Jane differ from the other love interests?
So, much like you, I'm a sucker for childhood friends, and it's no secret that Lord Benburn, future heir to the Byrne Duchy, is my personal favorite love interest. Much like the Duke of the North, the childhood friend has a fairly firm set of categories that he occupies, particularly in historical fiction or romance. He can support the main character or even obstruct the main character, but it's very rare for the childhood friend to become a serious romantic interest. Like our other character archetypes, Ben superficially fits the visual look of a childhood friend, down to his brown hair and ability to hold an actual conversation with the main character. In fact, this is a little exclusive thing we haven't mentioned to anybody else. Fans of the writer Ella Montgomery might recognize a famous childhood friend's influence in his design. However, when developing Save the Villainess, one of the things we are most interested in doing is diving deep into what archetypes and stories actually mean. A childhood friend is more than just a permanent object that trails you throughout your life. They are someone who has seen you at your weakest and most vulnerable. They know who you are in a way no one that meets you after you've developed your protective armor is ever going to quite be able to reach. There is an added additional wrinkle in our story as well, that we want to have historical justifications for standard story and game tropes and to explain how they could happen. That suddenly makes a male childhood friend really interesting. How does a young man become the childhood playmate of a duke's daughter in a time when reputation for a woman was her most powerful currency? What happens when you meet a man who knows all your secrets and you remember none of his? Who is Ben Byrne? And will you survive long enough to discover whether a childhood connection is a tree to support you or roots that drag you down?
I'm ready to die for him. I don't know what to say. I mean, it is what it is. If this will be my end, I am picking Ben. So,
And you know what? You finally get to be a villainess who ends up with the childhood friend. I think there's like 5 of them out there out of the hundreds of like villainous manhwa and
right.
manga.
And you were right, Tanya. It's so rare, honestly. And I'm always so hopeful when I'm reading the story. I'm like, oh, maybe this time. But it's just so rare for the main character to end up with the childhood friend. And they do often really feel like just a supporting character that is helping the main character get to the end point. And it's always sad to me to see that one way or another. It leaves this just tiny little emptiness inside of me. I was like, what would have this story looked like if you ended up with the childhood friend? I'm so glad that I get the opportunity to see for myself and experience what it's like.
As-
Now, yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, as someone who feels the same way as you, I really hope and feel that Ben will hopefully provide what you've been missing on that front.
I'm sure he will. Thank you for doing this. You specifically did it for me without me asking you to create a game where the childhood friend is a character and you can potentially end up with them. So thank you. This is my Christmas gift. That's what I want. Now, moving on to the servant character, they're very mysterious and seem to know more than they let on. How does their role evolve as Jane uncovers more about their predicament?
So, I am thrilled you want to know more about Servant, who is our non-binary love interest, because our initial idea for Servant was, what if Jeeves the Butler was written by H.P. Lovecraft? And a Servant ended up being a huge fan favorite. So obviously there's a bunch of people who love this idea, or at least want to know what the heck is going on with Servant and why they can do things that other characters cannot do in the game. So Servant, of course, is a character who's both a parody and a deconstruction of all the servants that tend to show up in the historical romance novels. You know, servants come in 2 different flavors. You know, they're either fawning and I'm ready to die for you, my lady, or they're just malicious and plotting against you. The butler did it, right? Like, that's the old cliche in murder mysteries. The butler did it. Servant in this game is a lot more complicated because Servant does know how to serve, but they aren't necessarily serving the person you think they're serving. And their role is going to evolve in very strange and unexpected ways throughout the story because they're a character who knows far more than they're sharing. So in the demo alone, the servant hints at some of the stranger and darker mysteries of the story, but you'll have to complete the entire game and hit the final route before you can answer all the remaining questions about what's their connection to the house, how are they connected to the larger narrative, and even what do they know about the author of this story. You're going to find out so much more about Servant as the game unfolds, and again, we can promise that Servant's romantic ending is going to be unlike any other romantic ending you've experienced in an Otome game. I can honestly make that promise.
Okay, so I have to ask about the spicy extra love interests. Roshan and Raymond Alpen. They were revealed during the Kickstarter campaign. Since they're not part of the demo, can you give us a little sneak peek into what makes them special and how their inclusion will expand the story's tone and dynamics?
We are so excited to talk about Raymond and Roshan, and I believe this is the first time we're gonna go a little bit more in detail about both of these characters. So, they're both fascinating characters, and I have to admit, out of the 2, Raymond is my favorite because he's such an amazingly fun character. And he's so different from all the other characters in the story. Like, every other character in the story is someone who subverts the expectations you may have for them based on their archetype. Whether you're looking at Jane the Villainess, Edmund the Crown Prince, the still hidden female love interest, we set them all up so that they are explicitly doing something very different from what the archetype they embody usually does. But then you look at Raymond, and he's flashy and gorgeous and smirky and obviously bad news, and he's exactly who you think he is based on his shiny, ridiculous surface for the most part. And we can already tell he's going to be a fan favorite. He's going to steal every future scene he shows up in, and people are going to either love or love to hate him. Like, whatever you think about him, you are not going to be neutral when it comes to Raymond.
And Roshan, on the other hand, is my fave of our upcoming characters for this. He is a character with a strong sense of honor, a deep sense of humor, and some of the most important secrets in the entire game. And in case it isn't obvious at this point, I love me the characters that have the deepest secrets in the game. He plays a pivotal role in 2 of the 3 routes and a hilarious, if much shorter role in the 3rd one. He's also someone whose part in the story changes tone as often as the complexity of his character, and we cannot wait for people to experience his story for themselves. We are really excited by how many people are already interested in seeing what Roshan has to offer, and we cannot wait to show his dynamics with the other characters in the game. The big question is, can you find a way to weave him into the story, or will he vanish as an unwritten tale?
I just wanted to ask this just for my personal knowledge. Are Raymond and Edmund brothers, perhaps twins? Or it just feels like it?
They are actually cousins, and we will explore a lot more about the interesting Alpin family, but let's just say that one thing we don't subvert is the idea that the royal family is royally screwed up. That's all I can say without giving away spoilers. But actually, if you do dip into our prequel novel, The Villainess Wants Her Prince to Live, we do go into more about the Alpin family dynamics, and they're fascinating, and you are going to learn so much more about them through the course of the game as Raymond shows up and does some exceedingly interesting things to Edmund and other people.
Okay, sounds very interesting. Can't wait, just can't wait. Now we are gonna talk a little bit about the animations in Save the Villainess. They're like living paintings that bring the world of Carcosa to life. What challenges did you face while incorporating animated characters and cutscenes into the game?
We're really happy to get a chance to talk about this because one of the things that was really important to us when telling the story was to have the visuals be part of the story that we were telling. So when we first set out to do the design and storyboarding for Save the Villainess, we really wanted to make sure that the visuals help carry part of the storyline we were doing. So what you see in Save the Villainess is what is actually happening within the world of the game. So paying attention to the animations and visuals will help you solve mysteries and learn more about the world and the characters. We are just endlessly grateful to our amazing artists such as Somate Studios and Saleha Chaudhary, who supported us in creating the visuals that help tell and immerse so much of the story. To create the plot-relevant feel we wanted for the game, we've actually used a very specific style of animation that pulls from Victorian stage plays and silent movies. I'm not going to get too technical on this, but we actually haven't brought this up before. And one of the things I want to mention for people who know something about old stage plays is that there are aspects of clockwork scene movement when you look at the backdrops on old stage plays and silent movies. And we've incorporated that into the animation where you have these repeated clockwork cycling. And we also used aspects of puppetry to help create some of the slightly ominous animations throughout the game. We also use a number of stage play and silent movie tricks of lighting and old-fashioned dolly camera movement to help focus players on specific aspects of the scenes and create a sense of both disorientation and immersion within the scene that's taking place. Without getting too much into technical details, the engine we're using for our game is not normally used to do this kind of work. However, with the aid of a lot of math, stay in school, kids, and the versatility of the Rempe engine, we've managed to create the feel that we wanted visually. It has taken a lot of specific animation work, but we really hope that it helps people feel like you are actually part of the story that we're creating.
I definitely agree. It helps bring your attention to certain things because it has happened to me when I read text and the text explains where my eyes are supposed to go. It's not the same as when the images move and the images are trying to make me focus on something and the lighting is helping me focus on something. So I do think that it's a very nice touch, all of it. Now, the game also offers different difficulty modes like story mode and detective mode. Can you tell us more about these modes?
Yes. So in Save the Villainess, one of our core gameplay features is that you must save Jane by overcoming constant murder attempts throughout the story. So you can do this by engaging in point and click investigations, by making clever deductive reasoning choices, and by battling unexpected enemies. But if you fail these challenges, your villainess will die and the story will remember your failures as time goes by. So, to help players overcome these challenges, we offer 2 difficulty modes that can be accessed at any time in the settings menu. Players start off at story mode, which gives them in-game butterfly indicators about whether they chose correct or incorrect answers when trying to keep Jane alive. Story mode also gives you indicators about whether you raised or lowered affection with the love interest in the game. However, if you want to challenge yourself, you can turn on detective mode in the settings menu. Detective mode strips away all of these indicators and challenges you to survive and get a romantic happy ending on your own. Just be aware that the game's challenges will only get harder as time goes on, though it's always possible to overcome them if you remember the information that the game itself has given you.
I think I'm gonna stick to the butterflies. I'm not a good detective at all, so those butterflies are definitely helpful.
That, you know what, you can absolutely stick to story mode, and we will also release a free walkthrough if you want to just get the answers quickly and know exactly what to do so you could stay alive. So if you want that challenge, it's there, but if you don't want it, we have plenty of tools in the game and outside of the game to help you just breeze through them.
I think that's a good idea.
I guess that there's just 2 types of people. I would love the detective mode. I would really enjoy that, and maybe I should have played like that. But thanks for adding that. It's so exciting to actually be part of the things in the game. So it's so nice. Thank you.
Lover's Lens, I died even with the butterflies.
I know that you have the curse of dying on the first possible moments. You always do. I don't know how you do it.
There's an ongoing theme with me where at the first possibility of dying in these games, I die. No matter what tools the developers have given me.
Well, actually, this is a game that rewards you for that. To be perfectly honest, there are some things you will only find out by dying. So it's always worthwhile to check that out too.
Okay, I'm happy that I have died and this is a skill that I now can use. Finally, my time has come for me to use this skill. Now we are moving on to the fun and lighthearted question. My fun question is, if Jane had a villainous survival kit, what 3 items would absolutely have to be in it?
Well, poor Jane is facing a terrible situation for any villainess, as she's an amnesiac trapped in a murder house with multiple gorgeous and suspicious potential murderers. In her particular situation, if she couldn't just get a ticket home, I think she would have a survival kit specifically tailored to try to survive where she is right now. So this shaped the 3 things we picked for this. So at least half the inhabitants of the house seem to be fond of puns and/or innuendo. So the first object is obviously a book of puns that she can throw out at random to escape while they are admiring her humor. Whether it is the book she throws or actual puns, I leave to your imagination. Second, Jane would like a means of escape should she ever find the door that leads to the outside world. This makes a horse an attractive survival item. Would a horse fit in a survival kit? Jane doesn't care. Third, while Jane is deeply concerned about eventually finding food that is not apples, it is hard to argue with how useful apples are for both food and as weapons. You can never have enough apples to keep you away not just doctors, but also potentially murderous former fiancés.
Okay. This is so nice, so good. I think these stuff would help her survive, definitely, especially the book with puns.
Absolutely.
It feels like it's an important part. And talking about humor, I noticed that Save the Villainess feels delightfully sharp, clever, and even a bit Pratchett-esque at time. So I have to ask, is Sir Terry Pratchett an inspiration for you both? And if so, I'd love to know what are your favorite books of his and what draws you to his style.
So we were absolutely influenced by Terry Pratchett and his way of marrying silly humor to razor-sharp social satire. So his Discworld series shows you exactly how you can have both incredibly tight mystery plots sit side by side with ridiculous puns and hilarious characters while satirizing society. So many of the puns and jokes in our game are a homage to his sense of humor. For instance, our hot pink feet fish is a loving homage to Pratchett's many-legged luggage. Meanwhile, we hope that in creating the magical kingdom of Carcosa, we've created a place as rich in satire and commentary as Ankh-Morpork and The Chalk. And, when it comes to like our favorite Pratchett novel, this is so hard to pick because he wrote so many amazing stories. But our personal favorite would have to be Night Watch, which we think is the best book of the City Watch series within the larger Discworld universe. So Night Watch is a scathing indictment of royal and noble corruption. It's a paean to ordinary human courage. It's a fantastic crime thriller. It's a time-traveling mystery, but it also manages to be a hilarious piece of black comedy. And we really hope that we can bring something of Night Watch's darkness and courage and beauty and amazing mix of different genres into our game. Because ultimately, what we want to do is we want to be all of the genres that the book was and more. We want to be a romance, but we also want to be a social satire and a gripping murder mystery with a very good ending, and a black comedy, and sort of a scathing look at what it is to be a villainess in a world that hates you and is full of people who want to destroy you for their own reason. And we really want to bring all of these different genres together to tell the story and bring it to the conclusion that we want to deliver to our players.
Okay, now everything makes sense. So it's time for the million gold coin question. When do you think the game will be fully finished, and do you have a target date, and how close are you to completing your vision?
So that's a great question. As we explained in our Kickstarter page, we anticipate shipping this game out in the second quarter of 2027. So this 3-year development cycle will give us an opportunity to complete writing and editing our existing game scripts and to complete and polish our programming, which does take time because Emily is animating all of our characters, all of our backgrounds, all of our cutscenes, all of our CGIs. And, if players are interested and they want to get some fun behind the scene sneak peeks, they can always keep track of our game's development by following our monthly updates on Steam, itch.io, our mailing list, and our Kickstarter page. And if they sign up to our mailing list, we actually offer some exclusive goodies that they're not going to find anywhere else. And we also offer monthly character cards where, people can email us and we will email them fun little different cards every month where our main cast basically talks about different topics of interest.
Do you perhaps have any exclusive behind the scenes details or fun facts about Save the Villainess that you could share with us? Sometimes developers even share early sketches or concept art, which our readers and listeners absolutely love.
Well, on a audio podcast, it's a little hard to share the art, but we do have some exclusive oral fun facts that we'll be sharing with you here. So we've really enjoyed these questions, and we're so thrilled to get the chance to sit down and answer them and the opportunity to speak about the game. So we have 2 actual quick exclusive fun facts that we haven't shared before. So the first fact that has never been shared elsewhere is that the font choices in this game actually matter. So when you are playing the game, if you notice when the fonts are changing or staying the same, you might actually notice some very interesting and important plot points. And that's a broad hint that nobody has picked up yet.
And here's another fun fact. The game will remember the choices you make from the beginning. So everything from your choice of favorite food to your battle with the cushions will have a larger role in the later story, and your choices will shape what that role becomes. So be careful about what choices you make. Even the most seemingly inconsequential choices will come back to haunt you in both a literal as well as a figurative way. Remember, we're a horror game as well as a romance, and every horror game needs a good haunting in one way or another. One of the things we really want to do in this game is that we really want to make it clear that everything, all the little details matter. All the little hints, like for instance, what's going on in the GUI, little animations that are going on in the background, jokes that we make about feed fish or cushions or apples, they will come back to haunt you. We don't put anything in there just for the hell of it, because anything that we put in the game is an enormous amount of work. It is an enormous amount of programming and art. So everything is there for a reason. And even if you don't know the reason yet, it will come back to, it will reappear to haunt you in the future. And it will show you that the decisions you made should never be taken lightly. It will always come back to you in the end.
I think it's confirmed, Lover's Lens. I think it's the axolotl. I
Yeah.
that's what that means. I think that's what that means. See, they're trying to hint this at me without telling me directly. I understand. I understand what you're saying.
That is true. The axolotl is both the fiance and he will eat you along with your favorite food.
I'm
So-
even more sure now. Those apples, they're there to, he probably likes apples. It's all connected. I can see it now. It's all
Okay.
connected.
What you've just said is hilarious in light of something that's going to happen later on in
Oh my God,
Eisel's route.
really?
Okay. Okay, just remember this when Eisel's route comes about, because that is going to be absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
I thought I was a shit detective.
Yeah. I believe you should play in detective mode. You're so good.
No.
Find that variety of bad endings. We'll probably get a Steam achievement from hitting every one of them.
Most likely. Yeah.
That's a safe environment to try things out, It's a safe environment. You can try everything
Sure.
and die, and it's gonna be fine.
House loves a good experiment. House needs to be fed.
Okay, so it's clear that Save the Villainess is packed with love, ambition, creativity, spices, and everything nice, and horror, and it's very, very rich. So what's next for the game, and what can fans look forward to it in the future?
So we are just wrapping up our backer kit survey of our amazing Kickstarter supporters and putting together a portfolio of the custom materials we'll be using to make the game even richer and more detailed. With that done, we cannot wait to continue to show people special secrets from the game, further art and materials. And we're also planning to host special events throughout the year to share lore, birthdays, and even more about the characters and worlds of Carcosa. For those of you who want to check out our YouTube page, we do actual little animated videos of our characters talking about different topics and things like that. And it's a really good way to learn more about them and maybe get even more immersed in the world of Carcosa. We are so grateful for everyone who would like to join us as we build Jane's story, and hopefully, ultimately yours as well.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners or any message for fans of Save the Villainess?
Yes. So we just want to thank everyone for listening to this podcast. And of course, we want to thank Lover's Lens and Sweet Pixel for hosting this amazing podcast with us. If you're interested in Save the Villainess, you can play our free demo on Steam and itch.io. You can also sign up on our mailing list to get fun and free cards from our characters every month talking about a different topic. You can read our free original villainous novel, The Villainess Wants Her Prince to Live, on Archive of Our Own and on Royal Roads. It is actually another romantic murder mystery with a lot of insane plot twists and a clear sign that every little detail that comes in the story that seems unimportant can come back to haunt you. You can also follow us on Bluesky at bestlaidplans.bluesky.social. We have a lively Discord server to join as well. And we just, want to thank you all so much for having us, for hosting us. And we're just so excited to share more of our game with you and with all of our amazing players in the end.
And that's it for today's episode filled with murder, mystery, and romance of Save the Villainess. Tanya and Emily, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights about this incredible game.
Before we sign off, we want to wish all of our listeners a magical, mystery-filled holiday season. Whether you're escaping into Otome games or surviving holiday family dinner, we hope you stay safe and make good choices.
And hey, if you're a Pratchett fan, pick up Save the Villainess for a story filled with whimsy and maybe a few eldritch horrors. Happy holidays, everyone!